Okay, so I want to give you a bit of an overview of what we got up to. But what's kind of important first is just to explain what a venture is and why we did it and what the context was. So a venture is basically the kind of the application of our training in a particular location, and it's like an intensive application of the training. So up until this point, ventures have always been repurposing business, so REAP specific. And this one was kind of special because it became the first transforming society venture that we've had. And that has been a bit of a kind of a mix of the repurposing business and the transforming society training that exists. And you can see on the screen, the tagline for REAP is repurposing business, transforming society. So the two are not separate. They're very much connected. And so you guys have been through repurposing business. Some have been through transforming society as well. There are people that have done transforming society and haven't done repurposing business. But when the two come together, something quite special happens. And so, this was basically our first combination of a REAP and transforming society venture. Okay, so transforming society is a book written by Brett. We turned it into some training, and there are four kind of key elements to transformation that it looks at. So this kind of shows you those four elements. So we've got building assets. So that's under the premise that God gives nations, communities, and people assets. And do we recognize what they are? How do we use them? How do we steward what God has given us towards a transformation of society or kingdom? And then you've got repurposing spheres. So we are looking at repurposing business, but how do we repurpose education and health? And how do we repurpose government? And there's 10 spheres that we look at. Then we've got relaying of foundations. So that goes back into kind of a history of maybe a geographical area or of a product or an industry. And it looks at the impact of that spiritually. And maybe there are shaky foundations that need to be relayed. And then restoring glory is the fourth element. And we've looked a bit about that in the REAP material, where we say, okay, well, what would society or your industry or a particular product, what would it look like if the glory of God was to come? Because we got to know what we're heading for in order to kind of get there. So we had a training and we had a global cohort, or we had a global group of students, and they were put into cohorts. And so each cohort then would either focus on a particular geographical area, or they would look at what we call a giant or a societal ill. The George venture happened because we had a cohort that was looking at a geographical space called George. And so if you are not familiar with South Africa, this gives you just a sense of where George is. You can see Cape Town on the map there on the left-hand side over here. And George is about 400 kilometers east. Up the coast. It's nestled between the Outeniqua Mountains and the Indian Ocean. It's on the Garden Route. It's a beautiful, beautiful area, and it's even known locally as Eden. So it gives you a sense of just the beauty of that space. And in that cohort, we had these amazing ladies. So Sally, you will probably recognize. That's not Sally's sister, identical twin sister in the middle, but it is Sally again. In a group with Debbie, who's in the red t-shirt. Debbie's based in the States, but has an ongoing relationship with these ladies. Nezzy in the middle, and then Jeanette and Andy. And these ladies worked through the Transforming Society material, and everything was then applied to their situation of being in George. And during that time, Usapo Indlu was birthed, and this is a non-profit that basically came out of what they felt God was calling them to do in George. And so at this point, Sally, do you want to share with us a little bit about what Usapo is about, what you do and where you do it?
Yeah, so hi everybody. So Usapo Inlu means household and family, and we felt 2 years ago that as we started the Transforming Society training, that God was calling us to work in Zone 7, which is a particular small neighborhood area of Tembeletu. Tembeletu has about 160,000 residents, but we realized that God was wanting us to look at just households and families in one street, in one community, and to see how God wanted to transform them to become effective and sustainable units in their community. It was quite challenging in that your instinct is to go further than one street and to go beyond the 14 households that we were called to work with. But 2 years down the road and having implemented Transforming Society and now having done REAP, we're starting to see the value of spending time in just one street so that they really experience change in every area of their lives, not just in one or two areas.
Awesome.
I see there was a question.
Is there a question? I can't see. Oh, there we go.
I think Jonathan had a question.
What does become an effective household mean?
So perhaps let's look at the opposite. An ineffective household would be a family that is just dysfunctional. Probably everybody who is an adult in the household is unemployed, and the effect that they have in the community is actually negative. So when we to become a unit, because not all households are just one family, they might be a child-headed family, so there are no adults, and there's a teenager who is the head of the household looking after younger children. It could be that there are 4 or 5 adults in the house, grandparents, all live together, and we have to assist them to live lives that are really without breaking up the household, which are really enabling them to know their full potential and to be the game changers. So what happens in South Africa is normally NPOs, churches come in and they just hand out. They just give out food. They give out clothes. They give out houses, equipment for houses, without teaching the people to work and to discover what God wants them to do and what is in their hand, what they're actually capable of.
And Sally, perhaps you can tell the story of the glass, Wilfred's glass.
Oh, Wilfred, yeah.
Such a beautiful picture of the application of this within the street where you're working.
So, Rachel, just now you mentioned the 4 elements, the assets, the foundations, the spheres, and the glory. And part of what we had to do was to try and cover all the bases. So the one thing we started was an adult Bible study on a Thursday morning, and everybody in the street was invited. And Nezi, who's our field director, who's my colleague, she would really encourage prayer, a lot of conversation. Just remember, they don't talk very easily about their situations, and she encouraged them to come forward for prayer. And there was a couple there who were unemployed, and they asked for prayer and that they would find work. And the lady of the house, Nazi, came about a couple of weeks later, and she said she wouldn't be at Bible study because she'd managed to get a contract work at the local municipality for 3 months. And she rolled her eyes and she said, I'm going to have to be doing cleaning. So Nezi said to her, you're going to be the best cleaner that you can be at the municipality. If you think you're capable and worthy of more, get in there, get your foot in the door. Remember, this was just the middle of COVID when there wasn't a lot of employment. So after 3 months, when her contract would have been over, she was actually given a full-time position, a permanent position in administration. So they had discovered what she was capable of. So in the meantime, she had said to her husband, because of what we've been teaching her through our different trainings, what can you do? You can't just sit at home. You've got to try and find work. And he said, well, I only know how to change window panes to replace glass. And she said, why don't you go out and start doing small jobs in Thembalethu, replace window frames in houses. And he started a business. He started slowly. Well, 2 years later, 6 months after he started, he bought his own vehicle. He has his own company, Wilfred's Glass, and they've built onto their house. They now have a double-story house, 2 garages, and they had just a single-room house before with a toilet outside in the garden. And had we just kept giving out food and not bringing them to a place where they could talk about not just their own situation, but what are the challenges within the community? Or how does God want to use them as families to change the street? Then their situation definitely would have just been the same today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sally. So a team of us then headed from Cape Town. So on the left-hand side, you'll see in the picture, there's me. Next to me is Farnes. So we recognize him from REAP. Farnes' wife, Lisa, and then Celeste and Isaac Peterson. Isaac went through the REAP training in about 2019, I think it was. And we were the team that went in as kind of external people to go and support the work of Usapo Indlu. So we got time with some of their board members, which is the photo at the top, all sitting around the table, just getting to know the additional people that support the work that Sally and her team do. And then the team that are on the ground, Sipokazi and Veronica and Nezi and Sally at the bottom there. So we headed to George on the Wednesday. That was a day of traveling. And on Thursday, we kicked off with a breakfast meeting that is hosted once a month by one of the churches in George, where they gather together Christian business people from across the city. And so Brett was able to speak to this gathering and to really challenge them. George leaders, what do you have in your hands? And begin to speak to encouraging partnerships across the city and into kind of some of the key concepts of transforming society. Sally got to share about the work of Usapo and really beginning to say, okay, how can we, as a city, as a network of people, how can we come together and begin to tackle some of the challenges that we have in our city? Following that, we then had a discussion, kind of workshop time, and that was with some local government. We were able to look at the questions of what sort of health are the different spheres in within the city. And it was wonderful to hear that, for example, there's a real sense that healthcare in George is really, really solid. There's a really healthy healthcare system. And just looking at, right, what are some of the gaps, what's missing, what are the things that are needed to respond to that? And again, just starting a conversation with a wider group of people and trying to build into their impact network. So as I've mentioned before, really wanting to grow out wider partnerships to make this thing sustainable and lasting and bring true transformation to the city. After that, we then headed on the following day to into Thembalethu. Celeste and Isaac, they have a painting business in Cape Town, in one of the communities, or based in one of the communities in Cape Town. And God had spoken to Isaac about his community, and it's a challenging community with many of its own challenges, and about using his skill as a painter to make a difference and see transformation. He was asking God, where are you and what are you doing? And God said to him, well, what are you doing? And he said, well, what should I do? And God said, well, what can you do? And he said, well, I can paint. And God said, okay, then go paint. And so that really started a journey for him in looking at, okay, well, God, how do you want to use me with the skill that you've given me? And so Celeste and Isaac now train up people within their community in the ability to paint, both theoretically and then with the kind of applied learning, so that they can either go and get jobs, potentially could be employed by Isaac in his business, or start small businesses, but really trying to equip local people. And so they brought that training to Thembalethu, and they shared that with a group of men and women. They had a morning or a day of theory, and then they were able to actually apply it with some practical on the Saturday. The rest of the team were then kind of on this plot of land. The picture on the left-hand side was as it was when we arrived. Usapo Inlu have got this would be a place where
Rach, we're losing your sound sometimes. So just heads up, I'm not sure what's happening.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So the desire is really to have a space where seedlings and compost could be grown so that it could provide resources to the local community, could be a gathering place, and could also be a place where training can happen, and could bring in people from outside of Thembalethu also to come and learn how to create their own gardens, as well as supporting and encouraging individuals within the community to create their own gardens. And so we built and planted out raised beds. We put in planted some plants which will create bushes along the edge for security. Brett and his team put up that marvelous fencing at the back there and the huge poles, and from a security perspective. The buildings on this kind of green building in the middle turned into a sort of light bluey grey, having been painted by the team that Isaac was working with. The toilet block got painted and decorated by the children. So by the end of our time there really was this just sense of beauty and opportunity, and just kind of new life that was really put into and repurposed that piece of land. And I think at one stage, Lynn counted about 49 people who were all there working hard. And this collaboration between the team from Cape Town, Usapo, and then local members of the Thembalethu community. And on Sunday, we visited a couple of churches. We were at George Methodist in the town, and we visited 2 churches in Thembalethu. And it was just wonderful, again, to be able to just speak into what does transformation look like, what is good news to the poor, and encourage just the local believers that God is on the move, and they can also be used to co-labor with him. So I wanted to ask Farnes, having joined our team, to just maybe share a few highlights of the time. So Farnes.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, I would say the first and one of the biggest highlights is actually being able to see how REAP would look in practical way. How we what we learn during the course, we see that actually how that is done in practice. For me especially, getting to know yourself, Brett and Lynn and Sally and Andy and Nazi in a better way, that was very special. And I think the Zoom is fine, or the getting seeing and training with each other is fine, but when you contact in person, that's just a new dimension. So that was great. First off, on the Thursday morning that we met with the leaders, it just showed me how to identify the giants in the marketplace and in the community. When you're in a sole business like I am, you only focus on what is your giants, and once you meet with other people and the community and the other leaders that is more involved in other areas of the community, then you actually realize what giants actually are. And it just refreshed my view on giants in the industry or in the community. And from there, to focus on one giant at a time. I think you also mentioned that there's a lot of, or Sally mentioned earlier, that you want to change all the giants. You want to change the whole street and the whole community, and you want to go and do as much as you can. And eventually you neglect so much that you can offer. And it just showed me to start with one household. If I can start with, for example, with my staff and make a change there where they are, in their streets where they live, and to roll out into to other parts of the community. So to start small, even with one staff member or with one person in your community, that will make a difference to that person. But when you have a common goal, if there's something that everybody work together, like we work through that few days, then it seems it's not work. You do what you find in your hand to do, and what each one love to do. For example, Isaac, he likes to paint and get people involved and train people. So that was actually, it wasn't work. So we enjoyed everything that we did. Just for Sally and the way that she's doing REAP and transforming community, that was I'll say one of the highlights for me. See how that is in practice done, and it's not about that handouts is a sustainable way of helping people, but that you can actually learn somebody a skill, and that will transform the society and not the handouts. And I've been, after we've returned that story about the guy that is replacing the glass, I've shared that with a lot of people, and it's great. It all touch and people like to hear that. Now, more on a personal side about the venture, what was we were very blessed. And when I saw how Lisa, my wife, how she experienced this whole venture, and that she saw that being employed and what she's doing, that there's actually a bigger purpose for her also to be involved and transforming society. So just the way that she experienced, I think that is one of the highlights for me. And Sally, now I know why I had to go to George just to broadly say along. So but that was, I think, my blessing on the whole, or one of the blessings on the whole trip. So thanks for inviting me, and Brett and Lynn convincing me, or tried to convince me up till that Monday evening to get me going. So thanks for that. We really enjoyed that, and if something like that would come along again, we definitely will put up our hands again. Even if we're not on a REAP course, we will gladly join. And that was a great experience for us. So thank you very much for being part of that.
It's brilliant. And it was so great to have you guys along. And as you say, I think it was wonderful. Both Lisa Barnes's wife and Isaac Celeste's wife hadn't completed the REAP training, but still were very much able to engage and see what was going on, and to, I guess, see the application, as you mentioned, Farnes, of what all this talk is about. What does it actually look like in practice?
I might say Farnes stressed me out beforehand. He was the only one on this REAP course with me. And he just kept asking every day for a week before. And then Brett was messaging me, what is Farnus going to do? What is there for Farnus to do? How's Farnus going to be a help? How will he use his skills? And Farnus never stopped running for 2 or 3 days. And I think for me, Farnus, you and Lisa and well, everyone on it was just such a huge blessing. And I love how you just actually stepped out and you came. And you have to say, you know, what if you hadn't have come? You know, it wouldn't have been that same experience for you or for us. You know, it would have been a total lose-lose on both sides. So sometimes you just got to go when God says go. Yeah.
I just want to mention something for the other trainees. I've got a real great tip on the training. I know it's the last session that we have tonight, but Janet was also one of the REAP trainees, I think, earlier on another course, and she said that she asked daughter Andy to do all her homework. So that sounds like that is permitted in this course. So I didn't know about that. So I'm asking Lisa's help to do all the homework for me. So a bit late, but yeah, thanks for that. It's up from Janet.
Excellent. Well, I hope
I'm going to get my revenge. I'm going to get my revenge on Jeanette because Farnus, remember Christopher who was working with us doing the guttering, Christopher with the red hat? Well, now he wants to do Transforming Society up in Malawi. And I've said to Sally, he's got to read the book. And when he reads every chapter, then he's got to go to Jeanette to explain it to him and discuss it with him. That's going to make Jeanette go back on all of her homework. She's going to become a trainer without even knowing it. So that's the plan. Yeah, good.
Rachel, can I give you a bit of follow-up of what's happened since then, which has come out of the venture? Would this be a good time, Rachel? Or
I would imagine so. Brett, yeah, we're good. Go for it.
So out of the meeting with the business people in the different sectors, today we set up a meeting with the Department of Agriculture, and they came to visit the site. And they are blown away. There's no other word. She just stood there in shock. She's an amazing lady, Asanda Zulu. She's got a degree in agriculture, BSc agriculture. She said she wanted the full story, the full scoop. And we signed forms today, application forms, and they're going to provide fencing, another 2 rain tanks for the property, barbed wire on the top. They're going to put a new high gate, and this will be the start. And as long as we can get a lease agreement on different pieces of land, they will come in and they will put up that structure for us. And what they absolutely loved is that we're going to invite community there regularly to do little workshops about how to do it themselves, how to bring the transformation in their streets, how to make the beds, how to plant the seeds, etc. So that was very exciting. And then the newspaper visited, and we have a big article in the local newspapers tomorrow. So I think a whole lot is now going to really, come out of it.
And the chickens also had fun visiting, right?
So I was out there today, but on Sunday we fenced the inside of the wooden slats, the wooden fencing, and we put the fencing down about 10 centimeters. So today the veggies are safe and they're all clucking on the outside because they can't get in. But yeah, that was an added problem. But we will start a chicken business too.